Finance meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Motion to adopt the agenda. Moved by Romano, supported by Carabelli. Please vote. I hate that always. Okay, I don't know what that is. The motion passes. Approval of the minutes dated October 29, 2019, moved by Haas, supported by Sauger. Please vote. Sorry. Motion passes. Public participation. Does anyone wish to be heard? Anyone wish to be heard? Seeing none, we'll close public participation. Budget reviews. We'll start with the Juvenile Justice Center. Budget pages D24 and 25. Director, let me just say your last name, Westfall? Rhonda. Yes, I know who you are. I just didn't know how to pronounce your last name. Come on in. And I don't know if you want to give an introduction, if you want to speak to us before any questions, you're welcome to do that.
I'll just limit it to introducing myself. So I'm Rhonda Westfall, I'm the facility director. Okay, and if you have any questions for me?
Guys, I don't have any speakers on here. Does anybody have any? Commissioner Carabelli.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Real quick, what is the status of the facility as far as utilization and what we're subcontracting out?
We're, in terms of population utilization, we're maybe a little lower than last year, not dramatically lower, and we do still continue to house St. Clair's residents in our detention program.
Okay, and I don't remember what last year was, 50%, 60%? What percentage is being utilized?
Of the total facility?
Yes.
It would be lower than 40%.
Lower than 40%? And out of that 40%, what percent, does that include the St. Clair residents?
St. Clair is using approximately 30% of our detention utilization. So out of 100% of our detention beds that are being used, they're using about 30% of those.
And we're using 40%?
Yeah. Well, they're using 30% of the detention usage. That 40% we have includes our treatment as well as our detention. So probably out of 140 beds, we are using an average of 42 beds.
For Macomb County?
For total bed space. So a total of 42. About 30% of that 42 is St. Clair County.
Have we reached out to any other counties to see if they wanted to rent space?
We have.
No answers? No.
Yeah, the counties that are close to us have their own facilities. So that would be Macomb and Oakland. We have housed a few Sanilac residents. We don't have a contract with them, but periodically we will. Of course, we'd periodically pick up a Wayne County resident, but that person's normally transferred pretty quickly back to their own community. There are, 21 facilities in the state who are sitting at low population that are vying for that. So I suspect that most courts are using the facilities that are closest to them.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Ha?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Rhonda, I was looking at intergovernmental for 17, 18, 19. They were all around 9+ million. And then in 2020, it dropped down to 7.8. Mm-hmm. Could you explain that, please?
You mean for the entire budget?
For intergovernmental. Oh, for the entire budget, yes.
Okay. I'm going to have Steve speak to that as well. I know there's some things.
I figured we'd get him into this.
So what's happening, Commissioner, is the state has changed the way in which they reimburse us for institutional care, so kids in outside facilities. So for a number of years, ever since I've been here, you have institutional kids and you have kids that are considered state wards. The state would pay the facilities in which the state ward kids were in and then bill us 50%. For all the other institutional kids, the county would pay the bill and bill the state for 50%. So what's happening is the state is now paying 50% to all facilities up front and billing us back 50%. So then their revenue is going down. The costs are going down as well. And you don't necessarily see that here right now because if you'll recall in September, we came to the board with a budget amendment for, I think, about between $1.5 million and $2 million, if I recall correctly, because we had a large increase in the number of kids in state facilities and institutional facilities. And the amended numbers in the recommended budget you have before you is through July 31st. So that number is, you don't necessarily see the increase on the expense side because we haven't amended the 19 numbers yet.
Okay. Thank
It was
you.
it was a change in how the state's doing their billings.
I figured you'd have an explanation. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I don't see any other speakers. Okay, before I call on you, let me get the motion to receive and file. Moved by Commissioner Sauger, supported by Commissioner Carabelli. Commissioner Gillette. Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Real quick question for Steve. This is listed under a special revenue fund. Can you give me a just two-sentence description of what the special revenue fund is here? How much of this is essentially funded by the county?
50-50.
50/50. Okay, thank you, Steve. Question, ma'am, is how many Macomb County juveniles has your department been responsible for over the course of a year, whether it's for a day or a week or a month? You mentioned, the average number of participants or people in a facility, but what does it add up to at the end of the year, both overall and for Macomb County?
In the last 12 months, as a matter of fact, I just ran those numbers. Just shy of 800 youth were placed in our facility in 12 months.
800,
800.
and all those from both Macomb and St. Clair?
That's correct.
So it'd probably be fair to say it's maybe like 600 from Macomb, guesstimate?
Yes, that would be a guesstimate.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Commissioner Duge.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you.
You mentioned Sanilac County. Would it be fair to say that going south or east, Wayne or whoever else, that they have their own facilities? So we are not responsible for that, or can we subcontract to them?
Well, Wayne County has their own facility.
Right.
Oakland County has their own facility.
Right.
Counties up near the thumb generally are going to Bay County for bed space and have been historically for years. We did have a couple calls on Sanilac in the last year. I'm suspecting because the facility that they normally go to, which is Bay or Flint, may have been full. So when they called us, we agreed to house and then build them for that housing.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, Sanilac County is geographically one of the biggest counties around, but I don't see that many juveniles there. It'd probably be more of an older population.
I suspect they're not detaining a lot of kids, but there was one or two occasions in the last 12 months where they called us. Their history of detainment may, as little as that might be set up with another county. We have reached out to Sanilac. I just don't think the usage need is there for them as well. So I'd
The
agree
reason
with
I'm
you,
saying
yeah.
that is if we
Yeah.
have 140 beds and we're using maybe 100 total,
Not even close.
Not even
yeah.
that.
Yeah.
42 for us, but to throw in St. Clair. Or is it 42 with St. Clair?
That's correct.
Oh, God, that's even worse. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Myjack.
Thank you. Thank you for coming here, Rhonda. So I just have a question then. If 120 beds, we're using 42, that's what, a third. of the whole beds, shouldn't our expenses, either our operations or our personnel expenses, be going down or contracting as we have fewer people in there? And obviously, if now next year all the beds were taken up, then we would need more personnel expenses. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, our personnel expenses are significantly down from the last couple of years.
Okay.
Some of our operational, our medical contract wouldn't necessarily be impacted by the numbers of residents because it's not a per resident fee. So there's some of our school contract would be less coming into the next year. So yeah, we've saved a significant amount of money
I mean,
in personnel costs.
I'm just looking here, page D24, personnel, looks like here for 2017 was 8.5 million. It's about flat for 2018, 8.4, and then from 19 to 20 to 21 to 22, I mean, it goes up. And then I'm looking here also at the positions here, 121 positions at the JJC from 2017. And obviously those positions are flat, basically all the way up, forecasted to 2022. So it just seems for me, my perspective, if we're having, we're using a third of our beds, shouldn't we be, I hate to use the word layoff, but maybe a hiring freeze or maybe eliminating some jobs through attrition? I'm not saying this in particular to you or your department. It's more to Mr. Schmiegel in the future, the budget issues that we're going to have a couple years going forward. That's why I say that.
I
You know
think
that, Steve.
Steve can elaborate on that a little bit in terms of some of the things that finance has done
Thank you.
for this. Yeah.
So thank you for the question, Commissioner.
Sure, thank
So as
you.
you'll see, the 2017 and 18 amounts are audited amounts. Those are actuals. So what you see in the the 5 right-hand columns would be budgeted numbers.
Okay.
And we don't budget full staff. So you've heard me say before that on the general fund side of the house, we have a 3% turnover factor for vacancies and all that. We
Okay.
actually have a 20% turnover factor. So we don't budget necessarily individual positions. We calculate the budget for all the positions that are in the budget, and then we reduce it by 20%, assuming that we don't have nearly the population that we,
So you're
would
saying-
hopefully have.
Right.
And so that number is 80% of full staff.
Gotcha.
What's probably happening in prior years is we're actually below the 80%.
I understand. So I gotcha. Okay.
Okay.
So you're saying with all things considered that going forward, if we continue at the JGC to be at, a third of the beds, then we're not going to be at this actual forecasted amount. It's going to be less than
Yeah,
that.
what we may be able to do in future years is if we have more trend again, maybe we could reduce it to 75%. I'm not committing to anything, obviously, but we may be able to increase the turnover factor, thereby reducing the budget, knowing that if for some reason population were to spike, for some reason, we would be coming back to you for a budget amendment to increase staffing levels.
Okay. But one other question though, Steve. So what does that, so we have less, again, we're using a third of the beds, but why are the positions still 122? I'm talking about now personnel positions of the JJC, 121 in 2017, and it's, we're not reducing positions, so.
We reduce reduce the budget through that turnover factor. So we leave positions in the budget as if we were going to be
But they're
pretty
not
much fully
filled all the way,
staffed.
those positions, you're saying?
Yeah, we don't fill them.
Gotcha.
We don't fill them. We only fill them as the need
I
arises.
see. I see. Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Thank you for clarifying that. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Commissioner Kraft.
Thank you, Madam Chair. What is the impact from the raise the age legislation in terms of population for you guys? Is it going to increase significantly, or are you guys going to stay pretty stagnant? Because I know that is supposed to put 18-year-olds into your charge as well. What do you foresee there?
What I'm hearing is probably an estimate from our local court, and I don't know that they can communicate that with any real accuracy until we get there. But what I'm hearing is about maybe a 20% increase for the local court. Now, that may not necessarily mean a 20% increase for the youth home unless those kids are also detained. But I'm hearing about, and they'll probably speak to that a little bit more this afternoon as well.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Romano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hi, Ms. Westfall.
Hello.
Just a curiosity question, and always looking for revenue. These juveniles that you have, is there any liability on the parents to pay any of these costs that are associated with these kids for housing, for food, for care? Can you charge back to these parents, and do we collect any of that money?
The parents are being charged. They're charged through the reimbursement division of our local family court. I believe it's $177 a day.
A day?
But the local court may be able to speak a little bit more to that because they are the reimbursement division for the child care fund. But the parents are being billed.
Good afternoon. I'm Nicole Falds. I'm the juvenile court administrator. And families are assessed $170 a day for the stay while a juvenile's in there. And I believe St. Clair County pays $150 a day. And we do attempt to collect, but in all reality, these families are not in a position to reimburse fully what they owe. So we do tax intercepts and other things, but it's pennies on the dollar.
Thank you. I guess, Mr. Schmiegel, if I may? You know, as we just recently collected from the clerk on some of these people that didn't file their correct times when they're thank you, campaign statements, and we collected a bundle of money simply by just asking them to start to pay. Do you have a list of how much money, or do you have a record of how much money has been collected? We've got how many people, 44 beds are
you'll
being
see
used, or
most of that's
42
in the-
beds?
That revenue is coming in under the reimbursement line item. That's $400,000 a year. I'd have to get a receivables list from the court in terms of how much is outstanding.
Could
But
you do
it's-
that for us so that we
Sure.
could, it's just a matter of, even when we did the campaign
I don't know
statement,
if we can-
it's a matter of
we can-
asking.
Yeah.
Yeah, we get a matter of asking, and all of a sudden the money started coming in because
Right.
nobody asked them to pay. They didn't pay.
Right.
So I'd like to see that record
Yeah.
if I may. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Westphal. That's all.
I was just going to respond quickly. We do do reimbursement hearings with families that owe money. They come in. We work with them on payment plans. If they're indigent, they aren't assessed the full amount. If they're on disability, they're not assessed the full amount. So there are mitigating factors, but we attempt to collect as much as we can.
Thank you. On the first round, Commissioner Carabelli. First round, Commissioner Ha.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify to Commissioner Romano, it just wasn't a matter of asking. They were threatened with a warrant being issued for their arrest, and I think that's a motivating factor as well. So thank you.
And Commissioner Ha has personal knowledge of that. On the second, what he say? On the second round, Commissioner Gillette.
Thank you, Chair. Steve had addressed the vacancies in the budgeted positions. How many of those vacancies are filled at the moment? How many employees are there out of the 123 budgeted? So there's approximately 50 positions that are budgeted for that are not filled. Do you know when, Steve also alluded to the concern that we maintain flexibility in case the population goes up substantially. What has the experience been in that regard? I know for the last several years, the population has been about where it is today. When's the last time it was substantially higher, to your knowledge?
2014.
And by substantially, was that 10% higher than it is today, 25% higher than it is today?
Oh, no, it was probably double that.
Okay. And so in the last 5 years, there's been a pretty
Yeah, there was a-
substantial change in that.
Yeah, in 2016, there was a substantial drop in the population. The court may speak to that a little bit more, but it's a lot of the deinstitutionalization and the way the kids are being approached in the community. A lot of those factors are playing into that. It's not a phenomenon restricted to Macomb County. It's
They-
going on all
Same
over
thing
the
in
nation.
Oakland County. They have low use of the facility. Maybe we should outsource to Oakland County and use their facility. I mean, St. Clair County does for us. We could ship our kids to Oakland County and use their facility and save a lot of money. That's something we're not going to discuss right here, but I just was trying to figure out what we can do about it. But thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner Carabelli.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This question is for Steve. Director Smigiel.
Commissioner Carabelli.
Out of the $2 million for the bonds between Martha T. Berry and the JJC, what percent is the JJC?
I don't know off the top of my head. It's I can't remember. It was about half, but I'd have to confirm that.
So approximately $1 million to pay off the bonds a year for the JJC. I'm just trying to wrap my head around it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown.
Thank you. Is there been any discussion about entering any other agreements with any other types of services to use that facility as it is, as a housing facility for other troubled youth or other medical ill purposes, like special needs, perhaps community mental health in search of housing, special housing, and there's autism, people with autism, severe autism issues that need special housing, special places for them to be, that could be modified. There's a demand out there for services out there. We've got all this space sitting there that hasn't been utilized. We always talk about this every time you come down, because
Sure.
you got a space there that's not being fully utilized.
I do know that there's been some discussion. I believe the board had approached the sheriff at some point. I do know that CMH has toured the facility and came through to look and see if there's any.
How recently was that?
I want to say probably 9-10 months ago.
Wow.
That was with our prior CMH director. Now, our new CMH director did do a walkthrough as well about 2 months ago. DHS has been through the facility. So there have been conversations surrounding that. Not anything formal to date. The county executive may be looking at some things that I'm not aware of, or having some discussions that. But there's certainly a concern with the population and the space there and the potential usage of that.
I mean, we're
so I
basically
think-
empty nesters with a bigger house, and we don't need it. So we've got to either find boarders or
Yeah.
or relocate or flip it. I mean, it's
Yeah.
something. I mean, we have to do
Yeah, there
something
was a
about it.
dramatic,
But,
dramatic.
But you're doing a good job over there, what you have to work with, and we appreciate you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Thank you. I don't have any other speakers. There's a motion in support. Please vote. That motion passes 12-0. Thank you, Rhonda.
Thank you.
Okay. Now we have the courts. And we just have a lot of them. So we'll do it all at once, I guess. I'll read them off, though, while you're coming up. We have Chief Judge James Biermatt, who's in rare form today. Just want to let y'all know. So we have the Circuit Court budget, District Court New Baltimore budget, District Court Romeo, Juvenile Court, Probate Court, Family Counseling, Law Library, Circuit Court Programs, Indigent Defense, and Friend of Court. So why don't I go ahead and let you just open up with whatever you want to speak about, and then we'll go into the questions.
Okay, and as I think I know basically everybody here, I'm Judge Biermatt, Chief Judge of the Circuit Court, Probate Court, and the District Courts out in New Baltimore and Romeo, along with Family Division, Juvenile Division. We have approximately 302 employees. I would like to introduce, my staff is behind me, and just when I call you, just stand up And Julie Bovashan is my court administrator. Julie oversees over 300 employees throughout all the courts. We have Tom Blum. Tom, 107 employees. And he runs the front of the court, FOC, and 35 years? 36 years as a, so what was your start date?
July 16th, 1984.
All right, I was 16, so sit down, Tom. All right. And then John Nizels, our deputy court administrator, and Susan Shabo, court finance director. They oversee 70 employees in the circuit court. All right. And Sandy Kegler, New Baltimore court administrator. I'm sorry, Sandy is Romeo. There's how many? 15 employees or 13 employees? 13 employees in Romeo. And Marlisa Boshen, the court administrator in New Baltimore, and there's 15 employees there. Is that correct? And John Brennan, our probate court administrator, I think approximately about 28 employees, 27? Okay. And Nicole Fold, you saw Nicole stand up. She oversees our juvenile division. There's approximately 78 employees in juvenile division. And we have a new employee in juvenile, Izzy, who's sleeping right now. This is our therapy dog. And in the class and comp study, he's getting 2% for the next 3 years. I don't know if you know you approved that, but so that's our new therapy dog. And I'm sorry, is it Amy Mitchell? Yes. You're our new therapy dog person. Yes. That's great. It is. And we are not, this year, for 2020, we're not asking for any new positions and just asking for a modest increase. But we're here, my staff's here for any questions that you have concerning the courts. Thank you.
Okay, I have Commissioner Carabelli.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question, last year we had talked about the video arraignment and you were testing it and starting to roll it out. Is that, where are we at with that progress?
Well, we have pilot courts, Judge Kathy Viviano and Judge Masseroni. Mr. Nizell is my point man on that.
Good afternoon. Yeah, so basically right now we have Judge Viviano spearheading the pilot program with the jail. It's still relatively small scale for what she's doing based on the build out at the jail that's currently going on. So in the meantime, we've been using the video arraignment system for the video arraignments for the district courts, which has been pretty successful. And then we're also using it for the Michigan Indigent Defense Commission for the meetings between attorneys and their incarcerated clients so that they can have confidential off-site meetings. So we are utilizing it, and as soon as the jail is built out, I anticipate that we'll have more capacity to do that and spread it out throughout the circuit court with greater usage.
Outstanding. Do you know when they're supposed to be completed so it's fully?
I would really have to defer to the Sheriff's Department on the completion schedule for the jail. I know they have the grant funds through the Michigan Indigent Defense Commission for the construction project, but it's pretty close.
It's basically going through a checklist of things that we have to shore everything up, but it's pretty much.
Okay, because we're very interested to see what that's going to do as far as for transporting the prisoners and what savings are going to be. So we're very intent on hearing what happens with that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Very good. We'll keep you posted.
Thank you, Chair Smith.
Thank you. Judge, one of the questions I forgot to ask in our budget workshop for the district courts were if we know the collection rates, because I know that's a big issue, right? We issue tickets and fines and things like that. Do we have collection rates for both of the courts? And I mean, because I know there's probably some standard collection rates. I'm sure it's far from 100%, but if you could find that out, I don't know if the court administrators from district court have those rates separated out.
We don't have that offhand right now, but I think we can get that to you.
Okay, thank you. Done.
Thank you, Commissioner Leonetti.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A couple questions in regard to the Indigent Defense Commission. Steve, I'm going to start with you. You don't have to necessarily, well, I guess get up. Sorry. Sorry.
I should just sit
You
up
know,
here.
So this money is all coming from the state, right? We're not paying a dime out of the county right now. Is that correct?
No, that's not correct.
All
We're
right.
actually paying, maybe John or somebody
Yeah.
is better. We're paying what we used to pay before the creation of this whole creature.
Yeah.
Mostly attorney fees, if I'm not mistaken.
So this is coming out of judicial aid then? Some of the
Commissioner, they had the existing budget for court-appointed attorneys, and then in addition to that, there were all of the grant funds from MIDC, which have allowed for the expansion of payment, the experts and investigators, some of the polycoms, some of the build-out at the jail, and all these other things. The MIDC just approved the next year's compliance plan, which is an additional large grant on top of that. So everything new that's happening is funded by grant money. Some of the existing public defense expenditures were already budgeted.
Okay, so when I look at I guess, Steve, when I look at the budget here, the forecasted amount, like for $3,670,000 intergovernmental, that's, I assume, coming from the state, based on what John just said?
You're on D37, I assume?
That's correct, yes.
So, yeah, intergovernmental is the amount that's coming from the state. The reimbursements would be amounts collected from defendants.
Okay, yeah,
essentially.
no, yep, and that's for court
So
appointed
you'll
counsel.
see that down below, the transfers in from the general fund are just shy of 2.6 million, roughly what it was costing us before.
And that was for court-appointed counsel.
Court-appointed counsel.
Now, one other question. The 4.5 positions, it looks like they're professional support. Is that like, that's not attorneys, right? That's going to be like clerk? Yeah. So, Vicky, you're on this one? Oh, boy. Okay.
Afternoon. The current 4.5 employees are 4 employees from the sheriff's office, so 2 deputies over at circuit court, and then 2 corrections deputies back at the jail. And then there's a part-time compliance liaison person that works out of circuit court as part of this.
Is that so they can bring the prisoners in and the attorneys
Yes.
can talk to them?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right. You know, the big concern I have, and I don't think anybody here in this room can answer it, unless somebody's from the state, is, you know, are we going to continue to get this money from the state? Is anybody else worried about that, or is it just me? Well, usually we get it for a while, and then they say, there you go. So you all feel the same way? Steve, Judge, everybody? Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Duche.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One thing that has driven me nuts for years about this is the law library. It might not be as much as, this might not be a high-ticket item and so on and so forth, but come on already. 58,000 loss for a library? 2019 amended is 58,250 in the hole.
So,
do we really need a law library?
Well-
Can't we just Google it and be done with it?
we're moving in that direction. So we've taken out all the funding for the law library this year, apart from what we are statutorily required to have in a state law library fund. There's a statute, I believe it's, Susan, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it's
You're
$9,000? $8,500. So
All
the
right.
entire funding for the law library going forward will be $8,500. And to speak to what you said about Google, we've actually gotten approval this year to have a Westlaw terminal at the law library so that people can do electronic research, and we're discontinuing almost entirely the books.
This has driven me nuts for over a decade already, and I just don't understand. Does anybody actually use this?
Oh, yes, people are up there using it pro per.
They do?
Many individuals who aren't represented by attorneys are up there regularly using it.
Okay, so they could be their own attorney and then sit in jail for 2 years for whatever. All right. if we can get rid of this, I think this would be a really good thing. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, although it's also said to me, though, you have to be able to know how to do it the old-fashioned way in case there's computer crashes or things like that. I don't have any other speakers. Commissioner Sauger.
Yeah, Judge, this kind of pertains to the northern judges. The weights and measures, it's a thing on my mind for quite a while. When these truckers are pulled over and there's not enough being pulled over, but they get their fines and they go to the townships, which in this case would be New Baltimore or Romeo. That money, whatever it might be, and I don't know what the fines are, where does that money go to?
For the overweight vehicle. Overweight vehicle goes to the state.
What percentage?
So it'll depend on how the ticket was written. If it was written under a local ordinance, it'd be 2/3 to the local funding unit, 1/3 to the municipality that wrote the ticket. If it's a state, then it goes entirely to the state.
Okay. So it's divided up quite a bit, isn't it? Okay. I'm finished, that's fine.
Thank you. Seeing no more speakers, please vote. Oh, I need a motion to receive and file. Moved by Romano, supported by Gillette. Please vote. Motion passes 12-0. Well, thank you all. Now we have Probation Circuit Court, and we have with us from the Michigan Department of Corrections Supervisor Alexander Goodney. Thank you, guys.
Oh, you introduced me and I cleared the room.
You know, I have a dog that looks exactly like that, a sheepdog.
I don't have a lot to say,
only
though.
he's 3 times the size. No. So I don't know if you'd like to speak first, or we could just, or if you want to just see if there's questions.
Oh, it doesn't bother me either way. This is the first time we've actually been asked to show, as far as I am aware of. So it's a good thing. I wanted just to, the only reason I really wanted to be here is we ran into a couple of budget issues since I was appointed to take the helm for Circuit Court probation. As you know, that we perform the pre-sentence investigations along with multiple other reports for Circuit Court, and we monitor the people, obviously, that are on probation. So it looks as though we haven't really received any increase besides, looks like maybe a 5% overall. So we've been functioning within those realms. However, in the last 5 years, since 2014, we've increased our staff by 16%. We've added 10 additional agents, 2 supervisors to our staff. So we've kind of run into an issue with printing, publishing, supplies, just basic supplies. So as we've moved money over the last few years, it's just kind of got to the point where the 5% increase wasn't enough for us to maintain us, even solid budget. So all I was really wanted to do is bring that to your attention and see if there is a possibility to add a little bit more just so we could function due to the increase of our staff.
Okay, first, let me get a motion to receive and file, moved by Gillette, supported by Kraft. And I don't see any speakers right now. Nobody has any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Please vote. Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Carabelli.
He was asking for something, that we go through Steve first, Finance Department, before we come to us. So I just, if you can ask Steve, or Director Siegel, did you hear he was asking for? he has some questions. We can't answer that. So I don't know if you heard his questions.
Yeah, I think he's requesting a 5% increase in basically your supplies, and I have to check to see, we would send requests out just like any other department. I'm not sure if we got one back requesting the 5%. So most of the costs in that department are indirect costs. So you've got about a $36,000 line item for supplies and services.
Okay, all right, I didn't know anything
Yeah.
about it. I didn't want him to think that we were very rude and didn't want to
Oh,
answer
right,
his question.
right.
That was it. Thank you.
Okay, all right. So, I mean, you might want to look back and see if there was something. Okay, so with that, please vote. And just so you know, we go through any motions that we're doing, they take place at a later date than the actual budget hearings.
Okay.
But we're being rather conservative this year, so we've got a lot of people asking for some things, and a lot of people aren't getting some things, so just to let you know that.
Right, I understand.
Motion passes 13-0. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
I no longer see the director from the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. She came in for the budget workshop. Is anybody here? Okay, well, so there's, we don't have a report to receive and file. There's.
Oh, their budget. Well, there's nothing.
There's nothing to, so we'll just pass over it. There's no report. There's nothing to receive and file. And I'm glad you stuck around, Steve, because the next thing we have is a correspondence, a motion to receive and file the correspondence from our finance director. Is there a motion? Moved by Carabelli, supported by Ha. And Steve, I wanted you to speak to this because it's a change in what we were expecting in the budget based out of what's happening in Lansing, correct?
That's correct. And you'll see that the biggest two pieces are the reduction for the diverted felons program at the jail and the recently released estimates on revenue sharing for next year are about $600,000 higher than we have in the budget. So, and then there's the issue, there's $20,000 in the sheriff's budget for retainer fees for legal counsel that don't belong there. They've stopped using that. So, but the two big pieces are on the revenue side. So the excess of expenditures over revenues for next year has gone from 1.7 million to 2.3 essentially.
So, Steve, do you expect that to get put back in the wrangling that's taking place right now?
I don't even want to venture a guess.
Okay,
I would certainly hope. I mean,
so
that's
was this a change based on one of the line item vetoes?
by the governor, yes.
Okay, so that hasn't all worked itself out, but
No, I haven't heard anything. I talked to Sheriff Wickersham the other day. He hasn't heard anything as of yet either. That's 1.2 million.
okay, and MAC is urging commissioners to contact their representatives as well as the governor's office. So thank you for speaking to that because it does change the budget we were anticipating. So there's a motion to receive and file. Please vote.
Maybe Commissioner Kraft, do you have any information on that?
Okay, so when we get home, I think that each and every one of us should call Commissioner Kraft starting at 7:20. Well, I'm just kidding. Okay, new business. I have a couple of things. The first one is I got a phone call from Mac, and there's a question that I need to get some input on. What they're looking at taking a position on is whether or not we as a county can put on the ballot not a millage, but a gas tax or even licensing fees and a gas tax to cover extra revenue for roads within our county. That's what's being discussed there, and Mac was getting some negative reviews from some of the rural counties because they're just happy as clams with Act 51. Okay, and they just want to, let's just keep this going because we don't need any more. So she didn't understand why commissioners would be opposed to that. And what I explained to her is commissioners, but I do want to find out how commissioners feel. I said commissioners are angry that they're cutting taxes at the state level and cutting taxes, and then they come to the counties and they say, oh, you don't have money? Why don't you ask the voters for more money? Thereby, the voters aren't paying less taxes. They're just shifting who has to act, and they're being the good guys and forcing us. And in our situation, we've got a jail millage coming up. I told her, I said, we have a veterans millage, we have a DIA, we have a zoo millage. We have so many millages that we put on the ballot. I said, that's why counties may be a little bit angry. Having said that, whether we're angry or not, she said it's a local control issue. Do your county commissioners want the ability when they're contacting people in Lansing and they're going up and testifying? How do you guys feel about it? And she's got to be in front of them tomorrow. So I told her that I would get back with her tonight and let her know what you guys think. Not as a group, not like a motion, but just individually how commissioners feel. Does anybody have any want to speak to it? Let's start with Commissioner Hoff.
Thank you. To Chairman Smith, I thought I read something where Gary Owens, our lobbyist, had sent that question in, and there was a response back. Is that the same? Do you recall?
I don't. I know he just sent something in, but I wasn't. I'd have to ask Patty. Maybe I can get Patty in here in a minute to answer that. But he wanted to come out and brief us on a few things I got at the end of last week. I don't know where we're at with her. I told her to respond to him and say, we'll take your briefings.
My briefing on this subject is tell the state to do their job. Well,
Okay,
they keep kicking it back to the locals. We've gone through state shared revenue reductions. We've gone through the property, and I don't want to debate. We've gone through the property tax reductions. All of these things are putting it more on the backs of the local municipalities and the county. We're sitting here trying to figure out where to find, I don't know what the number is now, 1.7, 1.3, 2.7, and the state comes down and says, oh, your jail's going to cost $1 million more. The local residents are tired of this. We've got a separation in Roseville today on the ballot between the general pension fund and the police and fire pension fund. I'm actually anxious to see how that vote comes out. And it's tax neutral. It costs nobody a penny. And people are just tired of seeing. So that, matter of fact, we've got something from MAC asking us to respond directly to them. And I think my response was a lot longer than what I'm giving you, but the bottom line was, do your job, state. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. And I think she was surprised by commissioners' responses because she said, I'm not asking if you guys want to raise taxes, I'm asking if you guys want to have the authority. And I said, and I don't think you're understanding our anger towards the state in their inability to do their job. Does anybody else have any input on this? Okay, Commissioner Gillette.
Just want to point out that it's not all been all these tax cuts that have been falling from the state. It was just 3 years ago the state increased the gas tax, increased vehicle registration fees by a fairly hefty amount. The unfortunate thing is it all goes through Act 51, so we don't get much of it. So our constituents have been paying for gas tax increases 3 years ago. We've been paying vehicle registration fees and watching the other counties reap the primary benefit of it. So I'd be more inclined to listen to the possibility of a local tax if they would undo the tax increases they put on us and let us keep the revenue from that was already imposed on our citizens. So that's my lecture.
Ron,
Commissioner Majek.
very interesting. I kind of agree with Harold. You had very good points on this. Leon, you also had good points. This new law that they're talking about in Lansing, local control of gas taxes, does that mean then, so a penny more in taxes
in Macomb County means that whole penny stays here, or is that going somewhere else? I mean, that would be.
Crystal was having a
Sure,
situation.
so my question is this proposal local control for gas taxes? So does that mean that all that money stays in Macomb County?
Yes.
It
would
does.
be give us the authority to do a county tax and all the
Right.
money would stay here.
And so what Leon's talking about, the gas tax increase, 6 cents, was it, Leon, a couple of years ago? Was it 7 cents? 7 cents. It went from 19 to 26 cents, I think. So there we go, he's right.
Which is.
So that type, just the response where you said, those 7 cents, that's going to Lansing, but we're not getting all that 7 cents back. And one of the reasons why is Act 51. Am I right or wrong on that? That's right. So no one wants to pay more taxes, but is there a better tax? And it's pretty simple to see that if we're going to have to pay any type of gas tax, having it stay here is better. Getting all your tax back versus 80% is better. I mean, I don't think anybody here would be in disagreement to that.
And she thought that the urban counties might take more of that kind of a position. I think she was a little surprised at my anger. So that it is a very valid
Now,
position.
I have to play politics, and please, I do not want to offend any commissioner here or any commissioner here with a political party. But when a certain party, when you run for office, the Republican Party, and you go to Lansing and you're signing this no tax pledge, there could be good things and bad things that come from that, repercussions. And one of them is, I think, is you kick the can down the road and you don't increase the taxes of what you need to do, and then it's coming back to us. So I'm having the political courage to sit here and say I am open to 100% of taxes, local control. I'm open to that. But if Robert Myjack would play politics and sign some county board of commissioners, no tax pledge, I could do that, as a one-person commissioner and choose to do that through politics and ideology. But I don't, and I don't think that's good. And if I did do that, that would mean I'm kicking the can down the road. So now, you see what I'm saying? It's going back and forth, and maybe it comes down to the municipalities. Warren or Sterling Heights or St. Clair Shores or Harrison Township would come to me, hey, Rob Myjack, Commissioner Myjack, why aren't you helping us out with the roles local control? Well, I don't want to deal with it. You guys deal with it at your level. So I had to get that out of my system. So again, I don't want to play politics or offend anybody here of what political party we are. I'm just throwing it out there. But thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Sauger.
Yeah, I think that can's been kicked down ever since Leon was in the legislature. Yeah, that long it's been kicked down the road. Hey, I got the floor. Would you shut up? What I'm trying to figure out is why we didn't come up with this question just a week and a half ago when we had all them legislators here.
I got this phone call today. Apparently, it's a pressing issue that she has to be in front of them to discuss tomorrow. And Mac's supposed to be taking a position. Usually, we do platforms. We negotiate the platforms, and I can't tell you what committee it is, but it's Dina. We negotiate platforms. Okay. Commissioners vote on them. But this was a time-sensitive situation that the phone call just came in today. And I don't know who she's meeting. I don't know if it's a committee or if it's a handful of legislators. But she wanted to hear from commissioners in the Metro Detroit area because she had already heard from the commissioners in the outlying areas.
I think Harold said it good when he said we got all this list of things on the ballot coming up next year. And some individual communities are voting, I think today, or they've been voting on road thing. So it's going to be hard to say, okay, we'll take your money, and then these other ones who aren't putting anything on the ballot, they're not putting anything in. So it's a bad street because some want to give, some don't want to give. And I give those in the communities that are voting on this hope that the heck it goes through. But I don't see it in the rest of the communities on the ballot. So they got to get together and we all will put it on our ballot in each community, and then how much it's going to cost each person. Thank you.
Thank you, which is exactly what we would be doing if it were a countywide thing. Commissioner Leonetti.
It's kind of related to this. We had Senator Lucido here with a very good plan, I thought. It helps everybody. Public Act 51, all those out counties are real happy, okay, because they're still going to get their PA 51 money. And the registration fees, where most of the vehicles are, which is right here in the Tri-County area, we would get that additional money. So as president of MAC, how do you feel about that?
I'm going to tell you right now, MAC will not take that position because commissioners in the Metro Detroit area don't even go. They don't participate in platforms. They don't sit on committees. They don't go. You know this. You've been there. They don't go and vote on the platform for the most part. Everybody who is giving them direction is from rural areas. So MAC cannot take a position that just represents 3 or 5 counties against all the other counties. They simply can't do that.
Well, there's got to be, I understand politically there's not enough will or whatever maybe, but I mean, it is really, if you look at it, a compromise plan. It really is. I mean, for this problem, it keeps the registration fees local. I know that we're talking about gas, we're getting off the subject, but it is the same thing. We keep the registration fees here where the majority of cars are. There's more cars in Macomb County, I guarantee you, than 3 or 4 counties in the Upper Peninsula, okay? And still, we're going to give those Upper Peninsula counties the PA 51 money. So to me, I think Senator Lucido's plan, and let's not play politics, he's a Republican, I'm a Democrat, I think it's a good plan. And I think I'd like to see MAC try to advocate for that.
Okay, and I don't want to, okay, well, I'm going to call on Commissioner Smith before I call on you. Chair Smith.
Great. Just a quick point of information. They are not, the outlying counties or the other counties will not get all of the money they get from Act 51 now because the registration fees will change. They will get their disproportionate shares of gas tax and other taxes that are in there, but the registration fees in Senator Lucido's plan would all go equally to each county. So I just want to point that out.
And I already got those commissioners to cast a vote that any new revenue would come to our area. Do you have any idea how hard that was? There are 3 urban commissioners and 13 rural commissioners sitting on that body, and I got them to vote in the platform that new revenue could come to the roads that needed it most. And that took a whole lot of arm twisting. So I doubt MAC would take that position, but I certainly understand this body taking that position. Commissioner Myjack.
Follow up very quick. I think all this discussion is great, but when it comes down to it, eventually we're going to have to put a number. We're going to have Brian Santo come in from the road department and see what the Lucido plan means, dollar amount for the county for road construction, and what a new local gas tax would be. So I think that would be important, what numbers we need to be at. Executive Hackle has publicly talked about the roads of Macomb County. I think the numbers were 1.2 billion, I think, something like that. You know, I'm sorry, Harold? Yeah, so that's a lot. Okay, so what I'm saying is I don't think the Lucido plan and a small local control gas tax, whatever that would be, would get us where we need to be to get our roads in good shape. That's just a basic opinion. So that would be something we would need to look at further down the road of all these things that are happening, where we need to be at and how much would that raise for us. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Okay, and it's sort of a split vote here, mostly against, but that's what I'll be reporting back. The other thing that I have, commissioners, is I said I didn't want to wait till the last day and all the budget amendments start flying on the budget. And Crystal and I had talked about, like, maybe halfway through the budget process, having a meeting where we start talking about budget amendments and getting individual budget amendments and actually casting votes on them. And if they ended up being super problematic for any reason, at least the county exec's office would have a the opportunity on some of those, not all of them, because some of them would be made at the end of the budget process, to at least respond. So we haven't set the date for that. We're looking at that, but it's going to be tied into one of the next couple of weeks' meetings. So commissioners that are looking at budget amendments, I know that Bob already mentioned to you guys to get them in. That's the reason, because we're not going to wait till the very end on some of them. And we'll let you know as soon as I think I'm going to come in at like Thursday or Friday and sit down with Crystal and try to figure out the best date to do that. And then the last thing is I'm going to turn it over to Chair Smith to make introductions. Oh, does anyone else have any new business? Okay. I'm going to turn it over to Chair Smith to make introductions.
Thank you. Well, we all know in the last few years we've hired different entities to kind of help us in our process with budgeting because, you know, we're still kind of finding our way through all this. A couple of years ago was the Raymond Group. Last year was Jen from, you know, the west side of the state who helped us a ton. This year, you know, kind of based on some of the feedback I got from Oakland County, who was using these gentlemen, we had a meeting, a few of us met with them, and we spoke with Crystal, and we ended up hiring, Mitch Bean and Robert Klein, who are with us today, to kind of go over our process. They've been working with Crystal for the last month and a half, probably, something like that, looking at our budget, what we get, how we work on our budget, what Crystal's role in it is, what kind of things we should be looking to get in our budget. They've done a lot of looking into our process, and I think they have some recommendations. Mitch Bean has, and I'm only going to give your recent one. He was a director of the House Fiscal Agency for the Michigan House of Representatives from 1999 to 2011. Bipartisan fiscal agency. You have your master's in economics. We have Robert Klein, who was a former treasurer of the state of Michigan, also well-versed in economics of state government, legislative bodies. And I want to point out that some people will say that our body is not like state legislative bodies, and I beg you to read the Court of Appeals opinion that says not only does our legislative body have all of the powers given to them in the charter, but also every other legislative authority given to any legislative body in the state. The charter there, on the other hand, says the executive division only has the powers given to them in the charter. So we've been told for 8 years now that we do not have the authority to do the things that we think that we should be doing. I beg to differ. Read that Court of Appeals opinion over and over, and you'll understand that we have vast authority in our budgetary. 2012. Yeah, we have copies of it here, right? But anyway, Mitch, without further ado, Mitch, Robert, we had a meeting earlier on. There was several commissioners in talking with kind of an informal conversation, so I don't know exactly. Probably start from the beginning, if you don't mind. Oh, your blue envelopes have all the information on these two gentlemen and their recommendations.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And as Commissioner Smith mentioned, you've got in your folder, you've got what I'm going to be going over, this draft preliminary recommendations. You've also got copies of our resumes, so you know a little bit about us. And we have done pretty extensive budget work, and we're both economists, and I usually say, please don't hold that against us because we're economists, but, you know, be that as it may. So we were hired by the board, contracted for, specific purposes, assist and provide requested support for a thorough review of the 2020 recommended budget and capital improvement plan, identify opportunities for budget process improvement to meet the needs of the Board of Commissioners, review, evaluate, and identify opportunities for the Board of Commissioners to further promote transparency and accountability on behalf of the taxpayers, review existing financial reports, information and processes, including the board's adopted policies and ordinances, and assist with various other requests. Now, we've been discussing this, and after discussing budget process with an initial group of you folks, and staff. And beginning the process of reviewing the existing reports, we offer the following recommendations to improve the process to promote transparency and accountability. Now, note these are preliminary in nature and subject to revision as the process continues and as you folks have input into it. And I'll start, there's 6 recommendations. I'll just state those right up front, and then we'll talk a little bit about them. And these are in addition to the budget parameters that you folks set, which are good. I think you can add to them. So first one, I think you should establish a consensus revenue estimating process that includes the commission staff and outside experts, not just the administration. You need to mandate that the commission receive monthly and year-to-date revenue collections reports. We do it on a monthly basis on a state level, and there's absolutely no reason why it can't be done on a county level. I guarantee you somebody is getting these. As somebody knows about it, knows where they're at. It's nothing new, it's just you're not getting them. You also ought to mandate that the commission receive monthly and year-to-date disbursements reports, so you know what spending is each month. And again, that's something that I guarantee if the executive made a phone call, they'd have it in a couple hours or maybe a day or two, depending. It's out there somewhere. Somebody's got it. We think you should require the administration and commission staff collaborate on consensus estimates of the economic and budgetary impact of all the policy proposals that come before you prior to consideration by the commission. Now, this is something, I used to, Bob was state treasurer, I was director of one of the fiscal agencies, and this is something we did on a regular basis. We would collaborate with administration staff, Senate staff, House staff, the technical staff would get together and figure out what a good number is so they could present that to the policymakers. Everybody got the same number, and then you can make the policy decision that you feel is appropriate. Obviously, there'll be a differences in who believes what policy is best, but nonetheless, you got to start with the same numbers to make it work. Then unroll all the budget line items, which is something that's in your already in your process. Now, the current process, the revenue estimating process, it relies solely on the administration, and they give it to you when they get good and ready, is what I'm hearing. The revenue and resource estimates that the budget proposal is based upon should begin with a public consensus estimating conference, a process that includes administration staff, commission staff, as well as some disinterested experts outside the county government. Now, we think that it should require, that the process should require a consensus between executive and commission staff, includes input from professional economists outside county government, and a public consensus process would greatly enhance your transparency and accountability. At the last minute, somebody comes and says, well, we've got less money or we've got more money, and you have no idea why they're saying that, which is my understanding that's what's happening on a fairly regular basis. Guys, that's just not right. And it doesn't have to be that way. Now, 2 sources of professional economic forecasts are University of Michigan Research Seminar on Quantitative Economics, or RSQE is what it's called, and Michigan Department of Treasury Office of Revenue Tax Analysis. Now, state of Michigan receives quarterly economic forecasts from RSQE. Their staff have been forecasting state and national economies and local economies for 50 years plus. They also have a forecasting model that's used if you're at Office of Revenue Tax Analysis at Treasury, or if you're technical staff in the House or the Senate, you have access to this model. You can adjust the parameters to something you think is more realistic, perhaps, and generate your own forecast. The benefit of a forecasting model like this is that things are consistent. They're connected, so you have to take everything into consideration, all the feedback and so forth. Then RSQE provides quarterly economic revenue forecast to all members of the consensus conference. I was one of them, Bob was one of them. The way it works is there's 3 voting members, the directors of the House and Senate fiscal agencies and state treasurer, and it has to be a unanimous consensus. So we'd get together a couple of times here at state level, but that would be something, that's a detail you'd need to work out. But you need folks to get together that have an understanding of what goes into this process. You need experts to come in. Public process, we'd always do it in an open meeting. There'd be legislators were able to ask questions and so forth. And I think those of you that were that I know from being in the legislature, I think you'll think that it worked pretty well. And I have talked to Department of Treasury, their executive office, because as was mentioned, we're working with Oakland County. I'm recommending this to them too. They need the same type of thing. And I talked to the Treasury Executive Office, and they're willing to discuss actually working with counties to help in the forecasting process. They've done it in the last couple of years with the City of Detroit, and they were having quite a bit of trouble actually coming up with really good estimates. And it's dramatically improved City of Detroit's estimates, and it's really helped in their budgeting and fiscal responsibility and accountability. Then this cash collections data, in order for you to track what's going on, somebody has to have access to the monthly revenue collections. Now, you don't have to be audited. You don't have to audit the books every month or something like that. The state certainly doesn't. But you've got a pretty good idea then of what's coming in and the flows, and you can see ahead of time if you're beginning to get in trouble or if you're going to have more money. Each month, for example, there's a report comes out of both fiscal agencies that goes to the legislature that says, okay, these are the cash collections, and this is what we think is happening, whether it's they're above or below where we thought we'd be at this time of the year. And it's a very useful tool for members of the legislature to actually have a better understanding of what's going on, where they can make policy proposals, either think about having to reduce the budgets or being able to enhance budgets, whatever they want to do. And this, you need monthly disbursements to spending. I mean, it seems obvious to me, and I don't understand why actually it's not happening. Well, I do understand, but we'll get to that in a minute. But that's how you can keep track of what's going on. If you don't know what's happening, either the money coming in or the money going out, look, information is power, and you got to follow the money. That's the way it is. And if you folks are going to have, your role is holding people accountable and really seeing that things are going in the correct direction for your constituents, you got to have this information. And there's no reason why you can't have it. I guarantee it's available somewhere, but they got to give it to you. And unfortunately, it looks like you're going to have to demand it. And then the policy proposals. You should have someone, Crystal, for example, in on the various policy proposals that are coming out of the administration or coming from the commission to the administration, and investigating, okay, what's a good number, what's a reasonable estimate on what this is going to cost, and what's a reasonable way to evaluate this? What's a cost-benefit analysis of this? Who benefits by how much? And, does it make sense to actually do this? Now, you can have disagreements on policy, which is fine. That's not a problem. You may think one policy is better than another, and administration may think one policy is better than another. That's okay, but you need to start at the same place, at least, in order to get things actually done. I think also you should have a rainy day fund. You've got a fund balance, but it's not real transparent. You should have a rainy day fund where your fund balance from general fund goes into that rainy day fund, and that movements in and out of that rainy day fund are required to come before the commission. Now, I do understand that there's something similar to that going on right now with your cash balances, but I think it should be more transparent. So I think it would be when you go to credit rating agencies and so forth, all that transparency, the more the better. Honestly, I think it'll be better for you as a county. And just on that note, I gave to Crystal, and also I think Mr. Smith has it, a PowerPoint presentation that was done actually in Ohio that talked about how local communities, what they need to do to prepare to go before the bond rating agencies in New York. My partner, Bob, he's done this for the state before, and he thought it was good. That might be something that, if anybody's interested in that, what goes into a bond rating and what do credit rating agencies actually look at, that would be a good thing to look at. Now, also this idea of roll-ups. Now, if you're going to have transparency and accountability, you got to have a rolled-out budget. You can't have 12 things in one line item and have the administration with the ability to do anything they darn well please with the money, as long as they spend it on any one of the 12 items. That makes absolutely no sense. It doesn't have to be that way. And honestly, you shouldn't let them do it. I remember one time, and this is, every administration of whatever level tries to do this kind of thing. Governor Snyder's first budget director, the guy out of Utah, John Nixon, who's a very bright guy, smart guy. I got along with him very well. His first budget he tried to present had no line items in it whatsoever. It had, you've got 19 departments for the state, had one number for each of the 19 line items. Says this is what we really need because this way we can do what we need to do, and we'll keep you informed. We'll keep you up to date with everything. I was in the appropriations chair, House of Approps chair's office at the time, and I said, that's just absolute nonsense. So I said it in a lot more graphic terms. And I can get graphic if I need to. But, it's just every administration wants the power to do whatever they want to do. But the legislature, and as has been said, look, guys, you are the legislative body of the county. It's your responsibility to hold people accountable and make sure it's transparency and for your constituents and to make things run right. You can't have one person or one small group of people that have complete control of everything. That's what we call a czar or a dictator. We don't have that form of government. So that's our recommendations. They're in addition to what the budget parameters you set forth. Bob has a couple other things he'd like to share, and then we'll open it up for questions or comments.
Is this covered under new business? Is this what we're doing? This, to me, requires an entire agenda item so that we have an opportunity to look at this and sit and discuss all of these options. I don't know why we're doing this under new business. Yeah.
Response to this after you have a chance. We are going to invite them back.
I would hope so.
This isn't going to be a one-time.
Oh, yeah. All right, we'll be back. So I just wanted to add one recommendation that, wasn't included in the write-up, and that has to do with transparency. I was looking at your website, trying to find some budget and finance data. I couldn't find anything. Maybe it's there someplace, but it's pretty well hidden. So, I think you need to provide on your website finance and budget information that's very easy to find. So, anybody in the public that wants to know what's going on can go there and look. And I also think you need to provide some data on how you're doing compared to other counties. The Treasury Department has on their website what they call fiscal health measures. They have general fund health, pension health, property tax health, debt health. I'm not going to go into all of these, but for example, on property tax health, the measure is taxable value per capita. And Macomb County is 62 out of 83, kind of fairly low in terms of taxable value per capita. And there's a number of other measures on there too. And you can develop your own. We'd be happy to help, develop any kind of measures that you like. And we'd also be happy to help, if you want to have a whole transparency program, we'd be happy to help develop some specific recommendations. So that's all I have to say, and now we'll take questions.
Okay, and Commissioner Ha, when they indicated that they would like to speak, I had no idea of the extent. Was it going to be just introduction? I just had no idea. And it wasn't suggested to put it on, but you're right. Had I known, we could have added it to the agenda as an amendment, and so I probably missed the boat on that.
Let me talk first.
Okay, all right, and we've got Chair Smith made the first request, and we've got Commissioner Gillette and Commissioner Ha.
So we can do this a number of ways. We can, I tell you what we're going to request, or what I'm going to request, and I think a few other commissioners are going to request is that you're going to end up back here again, right? That's for sure, because we can see. Your ideas I think are very good, and we've asked throughout the years to be a part of the budgeting process, just to be sitting in the room, and this didn't just start 2 years ago or 3 years ago. we've asked and asked and asked, right? So what we're going to not get into right now, but I guess get into for another response is, what do we do when we ask for all these things? And you know, some of our commissioners were part of a committee recently, well, this year, that put together what I think are great suggestions and requirements or requests in the budget that weren't adhered to. So the next question is, we can ask for something all we want, and you know, we're looking at budget amendments, possibly we're looking at all different things. So I think the next thing would be to come back and have this discussion on an agenda item, and then maybe discuss what to do, because we can ask for everything that we want, right? But what we get, we've seen. We put in a resolution that said we'd like to view these the budget through these parameters. You know, please respond. And what we responded with was, not only aren't we going to do that, but we're going to roll up the line items instead of expand them. And for some reason, it's going to take us longer to get you the budget, even though we're going to do less than what you asked for last year. So, to be honest with you, there's a great ideas on this board on what we think we should be seeing in the budget and what we think we can ask for. There's just no real solid way that anybody has come up with to figure out how we actually act on that when it's not followed. So I think that would be maybe a topic for the next meeting. Unless, you know, I don't care. I mean, you know, if you don't care if anyone asks any questions, but maybe we.
No, but I don't want to get too in-depth. The only reason I asked on the MAC thing was not to have the debate. I wasn't expecting a long debate. It was just to kind of get a feel of the board to report to her tonight. But I don't want to get too in-depth because that isn't an agenda item and it is new business. But I do want to give commissioners an opportunity to at least start, because he's saying they'll come back and we can finish this conversation.
You're reporting your recommendations. We'll get a chance to absorb them, have some individual conversation about them. And then I'd like to have you come back, because I think even the meeting that people attended beforehand just to sit down and talk with you was very productive also.
And just so you guys know, I was not able to make that meeting because of the activities of today. Commissioner Gillette.
So, Madam Chair, I don't know if I should ask questions or not now. I mean, maybe we should all not and then have them come back.
I think that would be the best thing.
Okay, I'll not, if everyone else agrees not.
We'll digest.
Okay,
and then we'll go back.
so Commissioner.
I had a great question, but I'll wait. I'd rather do it then in a
All
format
right,
that you
then
feel is
just
appropriate.
the things that are that you're thinking about right now, though, write them down so that you have them for the future meetings. I'm sure after you reread this, you'll have others, but just write them down what they're at the top of your mind. Commissioner Ha. Okay, so nobody is. Okay, and there's no receive and file. I mean, this was just new business. So with that, we have.
May I just suggest, if it works out, if folks can jot down some of those questions and send them to us, we'd be better prepared. And we're happy to take things off the cuff, but anything you can write down, send to us so we can be better prepared to answer your questions, it'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, so that you'd send them into the office would be, yeah. Okay, and with that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Public participation. Does anyone wish to be heard? Seeing none, we'll close public participation. Motion to adjourn by Duge, supported by Kraft. Please vote. We're adjourned.